The sky had been silent for so long, but then, one day, something unfamiliar entered its calm. They called it 3i Atlas, another visitor from beyond our solar system. Cold, fast, indifferent. At least, that's what they thought. For months, astronomers watched it glide toward the sun, tracing its path like a heartbeat on a monitor. Every calculation, every simulation said the same thing. This was just another interstellar traveler, a rock from nowhere, drifting through everything, touching nothing. Its course was perfect, clean, mathematical, predictable. But the universe doesn't always follow equations. In the control rooms of observatories scattered across the world, Hawaii, Chile, Spain, screens glowed under tired eyes. Scientists huddled around them, watching the faint trace of light that marked the object's position. And then, the readings shifted, not by much, just a flicker. A small bend in the light curve, but enough to freeze the room. Someone leaned closer. Another recalibrated the instruments. A third whispered something under their breath. The light wasn't behaving the way it should. It wasn't fading smoothly like rock or ice would. It bent, almost as if the object had moved or changed in response to something unseen. At first, they blamed the telescope. Maybe a calibration error. Maybe a reflection from the sun bouncing through dust. But as more observatories tuned in, the same pattern appeared again and again. The light curve of 3i Atlas wasn't random. It was rhythmic, pulsing, almost breathing. A brightness, then a dip. A brightness, then another. Over and over, perfectly timed. It didn't match the pattern of tumbling debris. It didn't resemble ice jets or rotation. It looked intentional. Something inside it, or perhaps something about it, was responding to light, bending it like glass under pressure. Days turned into weeks. Every night, the data became stranger. If you looked at the numbers alone, you'd swear it was alive. The light shifted with temperature. Its reflectivity changed with distance. It was as if the object understood its environment and adapted to it. One scientist described it quietly in his notes. It's almost as if 3i Atlas doesn't want to be seen. That line would later be deleted from the official report. Imagine standing outside on a clear night. Above you, billions of stars, each one older than time itself. And somewhere out there, in the black between them, a single object drifts closer. No sound, no trail, just a pulse of light, bending and fading in perfect rhythm. It doesn't belong to us. It doesn't belong anywhere. And yet, somehow, it feels like it's watching. By mid-June, the scientific community was divided. Half believed it was a natural phenomenon, a trick of light, a misread signal, maybe even interference from satellites. The other half didn't speak much at all, because deep down, they sensed something was off. It wasn't just the numbers. It was the feeling, that quiet, unspoken intuition that every observer shared but refused to admit. The feeling that this object wasn't behaving like an object at all. The data kept coming. Infrared readings showed that 3i Atlas wasn't reflecting sunlight like a normal rock. Its surface seemed too smooth, too controlled. The way it curved light around itself, it resembled a lens, but a lens made of what? Glass? Ice? Metal? No one could agree. Whatever it was, it absorbed certain wavelengths and amplified others, like it was choosing what kind of light the universe was allowed to see. As one astrophysicist put it during a late-night stream, it's like someone dimmed the stars just enough to hide a message. Public curiosity began to rise. When the data leaked online, forums exploded with theories. Some said it was an alien probe. Others said it was a dormant machine. A few believed it was something older, something that had been traveling long before Earth even cooled. But the scientists stayed silent. They knew how the public treated mysteries like this. They remembered Oumuamua, another interstellar object that defied explanation years earlier. They didn't want that chaos again. Still, there was one detail they couldn't suppress. The light curve didn't just bend. It shifted in a pattern repeating every 19 hours, 14 minutes, and 7 seconds. Too perfect to be natural, too precise to be random. And then it happened again. During a quiet observation window in Chile, as the object crossed the ecliptic, a sudden drop in brightness occurred. Complete blackout. For exactly 43 seconds, 3I Atlas disappeared. No reflection, no heat. Nothing. And when it returned, the curve wasn't the same. The pulse had changed, like something had responded. Those 43 seconds would haunt astronomers for months. No data could explain it. Every model failed. Every simulation ended in chaos. And still, the object moved, steadily, silently, closer to the sun. It wasn't slowing down. It wasn't breaking apart. It was observing. Late one night, at a small observatory outside Madrid, a researcher named Alvarez looked at the latest feed and whispered to no one in particular, "We're watching something that doesn't want to be watched." No one answered, but everyone in the room felt it, that quiet, creeping truth they were too afraid to name. What if this wasn't just a rock? What if it was waiting for something? Because in space, everything follows the rules. Gravity, reflection, motion. But 3I Atlas didn't. It didn't drift aimlessly like cosmic debris. It adjusted, and deep inside that adjustment, in the rhythm of light and shadow, was a message that no one yet understood. Maybe it wasn't meant for us. Maybe it was never meant to be found. But now that we've seen it, we can't look away. As it glided through the black, the object remained silent. No radio signals, no emissions, no noise, just that faint, pulsing curve. A heartbeat written in light. Every astronomer who studied it described the same strange emotion. Not fear. Not curiosity. Something in between. The uneasy awareness that you're being observed by something far older and far smarter. And so the waiting continued. Screens flickered. Numbers scrolled. And somewhere in the deep, endless dark, 3I Atlas drifted onward, toward the sun, every second closer, revealing that this was no ordinary traveler. Because no ordinary traveler could bend light so perfectly, so deliberately, as if it wanted us to know that it knew we were watching. The light curve had bent. The data was undeniable. Something inside it had changed, and the question that began as science had now become something far greater. What could bend light in perfect rhythm, yet follow no physical law we know? At first, no one noticed it. It was just a flicker, a faint stutter in the stream of light. A glitch, maybe. A static echo in the endless data pouring in from the stars. But in space, where silence rules and every signal means something, a flicker is never just a flicker. The first one to spot it was a technician in Arizona. It was late, 3:17 a.m. Most of the lab was dark, humming quietly with the sound of cooling fans and monitors. He was reviewing the light curve from 3I Atlas, the interstellar object everyone was already whispering about, when he noticed a strange rhythm. Not chaos, not randomness, a pattern. At first he thought it was interference, maybe atmospheric noise or a reflection from a passing satellite. But then, as he zoomed in, he realized something was off. Every pulse, every single flash of light was perfectly timed. He checked again. Then again, 19 pulses, each one separated by the exact same interval, down to the millisecond. It wasn't possible. Space doesn't move like that. Light doesn't behave like that. Nature is wild and messy, chaotic, unpredictable. But this was order. He logged the anomaly and sent it to the network. Within hours, observatories across the planet, from Chile to Japan, began scanning for the same signal. And one by one, they found it. That same flicker, that same repeating heartbeat of light. Across oceans, across time zones, perfectly synchronized. A pulse in the dark. For days, the signal continued. Every time sunlight hit 3I Atlas, the reflection wasn't smooth. It blinked. A soft flash, followed by silence, then another. Each wave precise, each interval unbroken. It was like listening to a metronome in the void, keeping time with no musician, no melody, no reason. But space isn't supposed to keep time. In meeting rooms and midnight calls, scientists argued over what they were seeing. Some said it was rotation. Maybe the object was tumbling in such a way that its surface reflected light rhythmically. But the math didn't fit. The speed was wrong. The angle was impossible. Others said it was sensor error, that all the observatories had somehow synced to the same glitch. But that was even harder to believe. And then someone said it. Quietly, hesitantly. What if it's not a reflection? The room went silent. What if it's a signal? The idea spread like static across the scientific world. Most dismissed it immediately. Too wild, too far-fetched. But others, the ones who couldn't sleep, kept running the numbers. And the deeper they looked, the harder it was to explain away, because the pattern wasn't just consistent, it was structured. Each pulse carried slight variations in intensity, forming ratios that mirrored mathematical constants, prime intervals, Fibonacci sequences, harmonic proportions. Numbers that nature rarely aligns so perfectly, but intelligence often does. The press didn't know any of this yet. To the public, 3I Atlas was still just another weird rock from another star. But behind closed doors, the tone had shifted. No one was calling it a comet anymore. One researcher described it in a private memo. It's as if the object knows it's being watched, and it's replying in its own language. As the days went on, the pulse grew faint, then brightened again, like breath. It was subtle, almost gentle. But it felt deliberate. Some scientists began plotting the pulses as sound. When converted to audio frequencies, they produced a low, rhythmic hum, hauntingly beautiful, almost musical. No structure, yet strangely familiar, like something trying to remember. In those quiet nights, under the glow of data monitors, a strange thought began to form. One that no one wanted to say out loud. What if 3I Atlas wasn't sending a message? What if it was the message? What if this entire object, its pulse, its rhythm, its light, was a memory left adrift? A machine still echoing the last thought of whatever built it. When sunlight hit it again the next day, the pattern shifted, ever so slightly, a single pulse delayed by less than a fraction of a second. At first, they thought it was an error, but then it happened again. Same delay, same pulse. It was reacting. Not to gravity, not to heat, but to observation. Every time someone pointed a telescope toward it, the signal drifted, as if adjusting, responding. Not random, not mechanical, interactive. That realization changed everything, because if it was reacting, then it was aware. And if it was aware, then something out there, or someone, had built it for a purpose. But what purpose? Was it a probe? A relic? A warning? No one could say. All they knew was that whatever it was old. Older than our species, older perhaps than Earth itself. Across the world, a silent agreement formed among the observers. They would continue studying it, but they would not announce anything publicly. Not yet. They needed proof, something undeniable. So they waited, night after night, recording, measuring, watching, until one evening, just as 3 Atlas crossed the inner edge of the ecliptic, the pulse stopped completely. For 27 hours, there was nothing. No flicker, no hum, only darkness. And then, without warning, it returned. But this time, the pulse wasn't steady. It was faster, urgent, almost emotional, as if whatever was inside it or behind it knew we had seen too much. That night, as the data streamed in from telescopes across the planet, a strange sense of awe filled the air. Every scientist watching knew it, even if they refused to admit it. This wasn't random. This wasn't nature. It was something else. Something that had crossed an ocean of silence to whisper into our machines. I'm still here. What that meant, no one could agree on. But one truth was undeniable. The universe had just blinked back. And deep within that pulse, buried inside its perfect rhythm, was something terrifyingly familiar. Not alien, not foreign, something that remembered. Is it random reflection, or the first signal from something that remembers? The world still doesn't have an answer. But for the first time in history, it wasn't the scientists who were looking into space. It was space. Looking back, in space everything follows the same rule. The closer you move towards the sun, the hotter you get. It's simple. Predictable. It's physics. But 3I Atlas didn't seem to care about physics, because when it approached sunlight, it got colder, and when it drifted into darkness, it began to heat up. It made no sense. No comet, no asteroid, no known material in existence behaves like that. And yet, the readings were clear. Every sensor confirmed it. Every instrument told the same impossible story. Something out there was bending the laws of thermodynamics. At first, they thought it was a calibration issue. Instruments in space can fail, sensors drift, data gets distorted. But when 3 separate observatories, thousands of miles apart, reported the exact same thermal anomaly, doubt turned into silence. 3I Atlas was cooling itself in sunlight, as if the warmth of a star was something it rejected. Imagine standing in front of a bonfire, feeling the heat rise around you, But instead of burning, your skin turns colder with every flame that touches it. That's what this object was doing. It wasn't absorbing heat. It was reflecting it, even pushing it away. Like a living organism defending itself from exposure. By the third week of observation, researchers noticed a pattern. Each time the object entered direct solar light, its surface temperature dropped by 14 degrees Kelvin. And each time it drifted into the shadowed region of its orbit, it warmed again. It was as if the object preferred darkness, as if the cold was its natural state, and warmth was the enemy. But that wasn't the strangest part. Because the heat didn't just appear. It radiated, and not randomly, but rhythmically, in soft waves, pulsing from its core outward, like something inside it was alive. Breathing. Every scientist who studied it described the same feeling, a quiet unease that grew stronger the longer they looked at the data. Because what they were seeing wasn't natural. Rocks don't pulse. Ice doesn't breathe. Machines don't regulate temperature this precisely, not unless they're designed to. But designed by who? And for what purpose? Infrared imaging showed something even more unnerving. Instead of scattering heat evenly across its surface, like a normal rotating body, 3I Atlas emitted heat from specific points, tiny, perfect spots arranged in a spiral formation across its midsection. They activated and deactivated in sequence, almost like a circuit coming online. Some called it coincidence. Others called it a system. Whatever it was, it moved with intention. In one late-night conference, an engineer stared at the thermal graph on the screen and whispered something that froze the room. It's regulating itself. That sentence changed everything. Because if 3I Atlas was regulating temperature, then it wasn't just reacting to the environment, it was controlling it. Like a machine built to survive extremes, adapting, maintaining, preserving. But preserving what? As the object approached its perihelion, its closest point to the sun, its behavior grew more erratic. Temperature readings began to oscillate violently. Within a single hour, it dropped from 280 Kelvin to 190, then surged to 350. A swing that should have shattered any solid structure. It didn't even crack. It absorbed every fluctuation, like a living thing adjusting its internal systems, stabilizing, surviving, enduring. The data log described it best. It behaves as though heat and cold are currencies, and it knows how to spend them. When images finally came in, they were faint but haunting. A smooth, dark body, too reflective in some angles, too absorbing in others. Not rough, like rock. Not frozen like ice. Its surface seemed engineered. Some parts gleamed like metal, while others drank in light completely. The more sunlight it received, the darker it became, like it was camouflaging itself, hiding behind its own shadow. And when it passed into darkness, those darkened regions glowed faintly in infrared, releasing the energy it had gathered. It wasn't just regulating heat, it was storing it, like a machine charging itself in the shadows. The question no one could answer was simple, yet terrifying. Why? Why would anything, natural or artificial, choose to reject the sun? If it were a comet, sunlight would power its jets, release its ice, guide its tail. But 3I Atlas moved like sunlight was poison, something to avoid at all costs. One astrophysicist from Munich said it best during a closed-door meeting. Whatever this object is, it doesn't belong here. Not just in this system, in this physics. Weeks passed. The anomaly persisted. Thermal maps showed more precision, more pattern, like code hidden in temperature. One researcher converted the thermal peaks into sound waves. When played back, the data formed a low, steady hum, then a pause, then another hum, each identical in rhythm and tone. It was haunting, mechanical, almost like a heartbeat, slow and deliberate. The recording would later be nicknamed the pulse of cold fire. The public still knew nothing. Only a handful of scientists were aware of what was unfolding, but among them, a quiet theory began to take shape, one that no one dared publish. What if 3 Atlas wasn't absorbing energy from the sun because it already had its own? What if it was powered, internally, by something we couldn't detect? A system that rejected outside interference. A power source that didn't need light because it carried its own. And what if that same energy, the one keeping it alive, was the same pulse that humanity had already detected in its light curve? If that were true, then 3I Atlas wasn't reacting to the sun. It was preparing for it, like a creature bracing itself before a storm, like it knew the heat was coming and refused to let it touch whatever lived within. As it neared the sun's edge, the object's internal temperature peaked, a perfect equilibrium between heat and cold. No more fluctuations, no more chaos, just balance. It was as if it had reached its ideal state, a moment of complete silence before something unknown was about to begin. And then, for the briefest instant, instruments detected something impossible. A faint emission, deep within the object's center. A thermal burst not caused by reflection, or sunlight, or motion. A heat signature that came from inside, like something waking up. The room went quiet. No one spoke. No one dared to, because this wasn't supposed to happen. Not to an asteroid, not to a rock, not to anything we knew. It was as if the universe itself had blinked, and in that blink, something ancient had turned its gaze toward us. Whatever 3I Atlas was, it wasn't passive, it wasn't random, it was deliberate, defensive, alive in ways we couldn't yet understand. And as it crossed the threshold of light into the black beyond, one question followed it, echoing quietly through every observatory on Earth. There's a sound in space that no one can hear, because space is silence. A silence so complete, it feels eternal. But sometimes, within that silence, something hums back. When 3I Atlas passed behind the sun, every telescope lost contact. For a few long days, it vanished completely. No light, no heat, no trace. And then it returned. But not as it left. The data showed something new. A subtle distortion buried deep inside the infrared spectrum. Too faint for the eye to see, too complex for noise. A modulation. A whisper in light. At first, no one believed it. Infrared sensors are sensitive. A single particle of dust can create interference. But this was different. The pattern was structured, layered, intentional. Every wavelength followed a ratio. Every spike matched a pulse from earlier readings. It was as if the heat itself was carrying a message. In a dimly lit control room, scientists watched the data scroll across their screens. Each curve, each spike looked like a signature, the same way a voice leaves its fingerprint in sound waves. They'd never seen anything like it. Infrared wasn't supposed to behave this way. It's just heat, energy radiating freely. But here, it was organized, measured, like someone was using it to speak. They decided to test it. If the signal really was structured, maybe it could be heard. They converted the infrared frequencies into audio. It took hours of processing, noise filters, calibrations, and when the file finally played, the room froze. What they heard wasn't random. It wasn't static. It was a rhythm. Soft, deep, layered like a heartbeat wrapped in machinery. It pulsed once every 12 seconds, low at first, then rising into a trembling hum before fading back into silence. And then, again, 12 seconds apart. Exactly. It wasn't just data anymore. It was music, if music could be built out of light and silence. The first to speak was an older scientist, eyes wide as the sound echoed through the speakers. He whispered, "That's not noise." Someone else murmured, "Then what is it?" No one answered, because deep down, everyone knew what it sounded like. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, like something was out there, trying to remember how to communicate. For weeks, they studied the signal. Each layer revealed new details, tiny frequency shifts hidden between the main pulses. They weren't chaotic. They formed a pattern that repeated every 6 hours. A cycle. A loop. Almost like memory. When graphed visually, the modulation resembled something eerie, a spiral of repeating intervals, shrinking inward toward a center point, as if the object was trying to focus. Or synchronize. Word began to leak through quiet channels, whispers in the scientific community. An object in space producing rhythmic, layered emissions, like a machine. The public didn't know yet, but inside observatories, people stopped sleeping, stopped doubting. The same question hung over everyone's mind. Was this nature's accident or design? To test the idea, one research group decided to reply. They aimed a focused radio beam towards 3i Atlas and mirrored the signal back. Same interval, same structure. Then they waited. Hours passed, nothing. Days went by, still silence. And then, exactly 1 week later, the spectrum changed. The modulation shifted. A single frequency. The timing was perfect. And in the soft hum that followed, some claimed to hear faint overtones, distant, mechanical, and almost human. Others dismissed it, said it was imagination, hope, bias. But deep down, everyone was thinking the same thing. Maybe it's been trying to speak all along. Over time, new layers appeared in the spectrum. Faint, complex harmonics building atop the main pulse. They resembled modulation codes, the kind engineers use to compress data into electromagnetic waves. But there was no data to decode. Just light and warmth. As if the message wasn't meant to be understood, only felt. When they mapped the modulation in 3 dimensions, it formed something extraordinary. A spiral shape identical to the one found in galaxies, hurricanes, even DNA. Patterns that exist both in the smallest cells and the largest stars. Coincidence? Maybe. But one scientist noted something remarkable. The spiral wasn't static. It was evolving. Each day, the curve changed slightly, tightening as if drawing closer to a singular point. Some began to call it the convergence, a slow motion toward meaning. For those who listened to the sound every night, the effect became almost hypnotic. It wasn't music in the traditional sense. It was too deep, too primal, something that resonated in the chest rather than the ear. It made you feel small. Not in a fearful way, but in the way you feel when you realize the universe is alive, and you've just heard it breathe. And yet, for all the beauty, there was something unsettling about it too, because the more they analyzed it, the more it began to resemble something familiar. Not a pattern of nature, but of intention, like an echo of something made long ago. The kind of signal a machine would send if it was trying to remember its creator. That idea spread quietly through the teams, not officially, not publicly, but in late-night messages, whispered calls, coffee-fueled theories. What if 3I Atlas wasn't just emitting random heat? What if the warmth itself carried a voice? What if, buried in those frequencies, was the memory of something ancient, something but once thought, once built, once dreamed? And maybe that's why it's still speaking. Maybe this isn't communication in the way we know it. Maybe it's something else. A recording, a heartbeat from a civilization long gone. A final echo traveling through light years of silence, waiting for someone to notice. Every night, the data plays back the same haunting rhythm. Soft, mechanical, almost mournful, like an old machine remembering the sound of life. And for those who've listened long enough, one truth feels almost certain. This isn't the sound of something alive. It's the sound of something that once was, a relic still pulsing across the void. Not because it wants to be found, but because it was designed to never stop speaking. Is this nature's accident, or an ancient machine still trying to speak? The question remains unanswered, but as the signal grows clearer and the pattern grows stronger, it's becoming harder to tell where science ends and memory begins. Light doesn't lie. It reveals everything: shapes, surfaces, imperfections. When sunlight hits a rock, it scatters. When it hits metal, it shines. But when light touched 3I Atlas, it did something no one could explain. It didn't scatter. It didn't shine. It redirected, almost like it knew where the light was supposed to go. When the radar images first came in, the room fell silent. The object's surface looked impossibly smooth, not just in sections, but entirely. No ridges, no fractures, no visible debris. Even polished spacecraft panels show minor imperfections. But 3I Atlas, it looked perfect. The radar beam hit it, split apart, and bounced back at precise angles, like mirrors aligned in some invisible geometry. To the human eye, it was still a dark, featureless shape drifting through space. But to radar, it was something else entirely, something engineered. Scientists ran the scans again, this time from multiple stations. The results were the same. Every beam reflected at exact, consistent angles, no matter the position, no matter the distance. One physicist described it quietly in her notes. It behaves like it's built to manage energy, not reflect it. That phrase stuck. Manage energy. Not a comet. Not an asteroid. Something designed to control light. In space, surfaces tell stories. Every crater, every dent, every uneven patch reveals what an object has endured. But 3I Atlas looked untouched, as if it had never collided, never eroded, never aged. Even its albedo, its reflectivity level, defied logic. Too high to be rock, too uniform to be metal. It was like a mirror coated in night. As the data spread between observatories, disbelief grew, because what they were seeing shouldn't exist in nature. On Earth, even our most advanced materials, diamond coatings, military composites, laser mirrors, degrade under prolonged radiation. But 3I Atlas drifted through raw cosmic exposure like it was immune to time. Its surface didn't wear. It adapted. When the sun's rays hit it, the reflection wasn't chaotic. It folded, splitting the energy across different angles, dispersing it evenly, like a mathematical dance between light and motion. The more they studied it, the clearer it became. 3I Atlas wasn't reflecting light to show itself. It was reflecting light to hide. Every time light hit it, the energy split in a way that reduced visibility, scattering brightness just enough to blend with the cosmic background. To radar, it was a maze. To the naked eye, it was nothing. That's when one analyst made a chilling comparison. He pulled up old satellite data, specifically from stealth technology research. The reflection patterns were nearly identical. The only difference, 3I Atlas was better. It didn't just deflect detection, it seemed to predict it. Almost like it was aware of when it was being watched. Every time the radar frequency shifted, the reflections changed too, as if the object was adjusting in real time. Learning. That realization sent a quiet wave of dread through the teams, because if the object was adjusting, then it wasn't passive. If it wasn't passive, then maybe it wasn't drifting at all. Maybe it was navigating. The scientists didn't say it out loud, not in official reports. But the thought lingered. Was this the surface of a vessel? A machine wrapped in something that mimicked nothingness? The patterns were too precise, the angles too deliberate. Some of the reflective nodes even formed geometric clusters, repeating sequences of perfect hexagons and spirals, visible only under deep radar contrast, like armor plates or panels, each one positioned as if part of a larger system. They tried calculating how much energy it would take to maintain that surface, to keep it flawless through millions of miles of cosmic debris. The numbers were impossible. Even the best technology on Earth would degrade after weeks in space. But this thing had been traveling for centuries, maybe longer. So either it was made from something we couldn't imagine, or something was constantly repairing it. By the end of the month, a new term appeared in the classified reports, the reflectivity paradox, because what reflected light so perfectly also concealed it. The more they tried to illuminate the object, the less they saw. It was as if 3I Atlas was built to exist between visibility and invisibility, seen only when it wanted to be. Every attempt to increase exposure made it vanish further into the background. To detect it was to lose it. One night, during a deep radar sweep from Chile, an operator noticed something strange. As the system switched wavelengths, the object's reflections suddenly pulsed, a brief shimmer, like light bending around a corner. Then, gone. It wasn't a glitch. The data confirmed it. The object had changed its reflectivity mid-scan. The adjustment wasn't random. It matched the radar frequency itself. As if 3I Atlas could hear the scan and respond instantly. For the first time, someone said what everyone was thinking. What if this isn't a surface? They looked around, confused. The scientist continued. What if we're not seeing the material at all? What if this is a shield, a field designed to bend light, not reflect it? The room went silent. If that was true, then the smoothness wasn't texture. It was technology. The deeper they dug, the more impossible it became. The object's entire design seemed to follow one rule: not to draw attention, but to vanish into its surroundings, like a traveler who never wanted to be found. Each beam of energy, each photon of light that touched it, was redirected away, scattered back toward the stars, as though the universe itself was helping it disappear. Maybe that was its purpose: to hide, to move unseen across the galaxies. But from what? No one had the answer, only questions. Because if it could hide this well, that meant one thing: it had something worth hiding. And yet, the perfection of its design felt almost tragic, like something built long ago by hands that no longer existed, a relic still carrying out its purpose even after its creators were gone. A machine obeying a command it no longer remembers. To this day, no one knows what the surface of 3i Atlas truly is. Rock, metal, shield, something beyond matter itself. But one truth remains: light touches everything in the universe, except this. It redirects, deflects, conceals, like a secret that refuses to be seen. And as scientists stared into the endless data, one question began to echo louder than all the rest. It happened quietly. No flash, no explosion, no sign of power, just movement. For months, the object had followed its path perfectly. A smooth, predictable orbit, defined by the laws of gravity. Every telescope, every simulation, every piece of math agreed on where it was supposed to be. And then it wasn't. 3i Atlas shifted. A tiny adjustment, just a fraction of a degree, barely noticeable at first. But in space, even the smallest deviation changes everything. At first, they thought it was a glitch, maybe an error in the coordinates. Data alignment issues happen all the time. But when 3 different observatories confirmed the same thing, it became undeniable. The object had altered its course. No outgassing, no visible jets, no gravitational tug from any nearby body, just deliberate redirection. It wasn't drifting anymore. It was moving. Imagine watching a leaf float down a river. Calm, predictable. Then, suddenly, without any wind or current, the leaf turns upstream. That's what 3i Atlas did. It defied motion itself. The adjustment was small, only a few hundred kilometers off its expected path, but the precision was surgical. Every gravitational model failed. Every simulation broke. Even the sun's pull couldn't explain it. Something had made a choice. Scientists checked everything. Again and again. Solar radiation pressure? No, too weak. Outgassing from hidden ice? No jets detected. Micrometeor impacts? No debris trails. Nothing. It was as if 3i Atlas had adjusted its position without a force. That shouldn't be possible, unless the object wasn't being pushed but decided to move. The report came out quietly, buried in technical language, to avoid panic. It read, "Observed non-gravitational acceleration inconsistent with natural behavior." That one sentence changed everything, because if it wasn't natural, then it wasn't random. And if it wasn't random, then it was following something. By now, scientists were beyond confusion. They were uneasy, because movement implies intention, and intention implies intelligence. Was it navigating? Or was it remembering? Weeks passed, and the pattern became clearer. Each time 3i Atlas approached a region of high solar interference, near magnetic boundaries or radiation belts, its path shifted, slightly avoiding them, like a bird altering its flight to dodge turbulence. It was subtle, but it was aware. Telemetry analysts started mapping the deviations, layer by layer. And what they found made no sense. The course changes weren't random corrections. They formed a sequence, geometric, looping, predictable, almost like coordinates, or a memory. Each micro-adjustment seemed to point towards something, a distant location, far beyond the sun's orbit. In one late-night meeting, an astronomer leaned back in his chair and said quietly, "What if it's not going anywhere new? What if it's going back?" The room went silent. Because for the first time, someone said what everyone else was afraid to think. What if 3 Atlas wasn't a traveler? What if it was a returning signal, a messenger, going home? As the object continued to move, the pattern of its trajectory started aligning with something uncanny. Old star charts, ancient coordinates. It seemed to be tracing a path once taken long ago, a trajectory not chosen by gravity, but by memory, like a machine, following a map written in the language of light. NASA's Deep Space Network began sending out stronger radar pings, trying to track every micro-shift. Each time they did, the object reacted. Not much, but just enough to be noticed. A fractional change in angle. A shift in timing, almost like acknowledgement. It was as if 3i Atlas knew it was being watched, and it didn't like it. No one could explain the physics behind it. Every natural law we know says motion must come from force. But here was something that moved with precision, without propulsion, as though gravity itself was merely a suggestion. The data left one haunting conclusion. 3i Atlas wasn't obeying the universe. It was working around it. The term deviation became a quiet obsession among astronomers. Every day they waited for another one, another shift, another sign. And every time it moved, the pattern repeated, always in calculated silence, always in perfect rhythm. It wasn't rushing, it wasn't lost, it was gliding, with the calm precision of something that had done this before. By the third deviation, a pattern emerged. The timing between shifts matched the earlier light pulses from Chapter 2. The same rhythm, the same intervals, the pulses and the movements were linked. Each time it adjusted, a faint light flickered from its surface, not bright enough for the naked eye, but visible through deep infrared, like a heartbeat, the pulse of something alive, or something remembering its purpose. One researcher from the European Space Agency described it perfectly in his field notes. It doesn't accelerate, it aligns. Every movement had a reason. Every turn was smooth, precise, elegant, like it was moving along invisible tracks laid out long ago, as if the universe had written a secret path for it to follow, and now it was finding its way home. Speculation ran wild. Some said it was a probe, an ancient messenger on autopilot, still obeying the last command of its builders. Others believed it was alive, guided by instinct rather than design. But the most haunting theory was the simplest. What if it wasn't responding to us at all? What if something else out there was calling it? A distant frequency, a forgotten signal, an awakening. And so it moved, quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. Each deviation bringing it closer to something unseen, something waiting beyond our reach. To most, it was just another object in the night sky, a speck of light among billions. But to those who had been watching, it felt different, like a memory finally finding its way back to its source. No jets, no dust, no propulsion, just movement, measured, controlled, and silent. Was it navigating or simply remembering where to go? No one knows. But one thing is certain. Whatever 3I Atlas is, it's not lost. It's returning. It started as a quiet whisper, a rumor buried beneath data, numbers, and long nights staring into screens. But soon it became the question no one could ignore. What if 3I Atlas isn't natural? What if it was built? At first, the thought sounded insane. A manufactured object from another star? It went against everything we understood about the universe. Yet the evidence kept growing, small details, each one impossible to explain away. The perfect light reflections, the controlled heat emissions, the precise course adjustments without propulsion. Piece by piece, it began to look less like a rock and more like a design. In conference rooms and midnight labs, the debate fractured the community. Half clung to science, the kind they could measure, chart, and predict. The other half stared at the data and felt something deeper, a quiet dread. Because if this object was made, then someone, or something, made it. And that single thought changed everything. No one said the words out loud, not at first, but you could feel them hanging in the air, heavy and electric. Artificial origin. It wasn't just a new idea, it was a wound. Because if it was true, then humanity wasn't the first. We were just the latest. The first formal paper came from a research team in Prague. It was titled On the Non-Natural Behavior of 3I Atlas. They didn't claim it was alien. They didn't claim it was intelligent. They simply stated the facts, the motion patterns, the precision, the thermal regulation, the way it responded to observation. Everything pointed toward one conclusion. This object didn't form. It was assembled. The backlash was immediate. Emails flooded in from senior scientists. Careers were threatened. Funding was cut. One of the authors later described it. It felt like we had said something forbidden, like we'd opened a door that was meant to stay locked. And maybe they had, because the moment you accept that something out there might be engineered, you also have to accept that someone built it, and that someone could still exist. Every major space agency tried to calm the storm. They blamed solar pressure, magnetic interference, instrument misreads, anything that could explain the impossible. But behind closed doors, they were asking the same question. If this is a machine, what is it doing here? Some believed it was a probe, an autonomous scout, drifting between stars, collecting data, searching for life. Others thought it was a relic, a grave marker from a civilization long dead, still following the last command it ever received. But a few whispered something darker. What if it wasn't sent to explore? What if it was sent to observe? That theory, the machine hypothesis, spread quietly through classified channels. It wasn't proof, it wasn't consensus, but it explained what nothing else could. The perfect reflectivity, the controlled temperature, the silent course corrections. It wasn't adapting. It was performing, like a system executing a program it had been running for centuries. Imagine a machine so ancient its creators are long gone, its language forgotten, its purpose lost in time. And yet, it keeps moving, faithfully obeying instructions written by hands that turned to dust long ago. That's what 3I Atlas began to look like. Not a message from the stars, but a memory. When NASA released its latest radar composites, one image caught everyone's attention. A faint indentation on one side, too uniform to be an impact, too symmetrical to be random. It looked almost like a hatch. The shape wasn't deep enough to prove anything, but it sparked a frenzy. Forums lit up. Theorists went wild. Was there something inside? But the scientists who knew the data best weren't excited. They were terrified, because the longer they studied it, the more they realized something unsettling. 3. I-Atlas wasn't drifting through space. It was scanning it. Its slow rotations weren't random. Each turn aligned with major planets, pulsars, and even Earth, almost like it was watching or recording. One astronomer from Chile summed it up perfectly. It's not lost, it's working. Those 5 words changed the tone of everything. Because if it was working, then it had power. And if it had power, then someone gave it that power for a reason. By now, everyone wanted answers. Governments demanded new data. Agencies argued over who owned the discovery. But the scientists, the ones who had watched it from the beginning, they didn't want to own it. They just wanted to understand it. What kind of intelligence builds something like this and sends it across the stars without a crew, without a voice, without an end? The more they searched for meaning, the quieter the mystery became. 3 I-Atlas didn't react to signals anymore. It didn't pulse or shift or emit. It just drifted, perfectly silent. Some thought the machine had powered down. Others believed it had already done what it came to do, whatever that was. But here's the haunting part. Even silence carries weight, because silence means it's waiting for something we can't see, or someone we don't yet understand. Maybe it isn't a probe at all. Maybe it's a key, a fragment of something greater, left behind for those who would one day learn to listen. Or maybe it's a warning, a reminder of what happens when creation outlives its creator. A machine built with purpose, but no memory of why. Late one night, a researcher stayed behind in an empty observatory. He replayed the radar echoes of 3 I-Atlas, the same pulses everyone else had moved on from. But in the quiet hum of the data, he noticed something no one else had. Each return signal was slightly delayed, not random, patterned. When he mapped the timing differences, the result sent chills down his spine. The delays formed a sequence, identical to the spacing between the planets of our solar system, almost like the machine had been expecting to find us. So now the question isn't just whether it was built, it's why it came here. Was it sent to watch, to learn, to remember, or is it simply retracing a path its creators once took, returning to the place where everything began? If 3 I-Atlas is a machine, then we aren't just observing a visitor. We're witnessing a message from a civilization older than imagination. A message written not in language or sound, but in motion, silence, and precision. A message that might be saying only one thing: we were here. And maybe that's what frightens us most. Not that it's artificial, but that it's familiar. Because when you strip away everything, the mystery, the data, the theories, you're left with something painfully human. The instinct to build something that outlives you. If this object was built, then who or what built it? And why send it here? Maybe we'll never know. But somewhere out there, in the dark between stars, something might still be listening. Space has never answered back. For centuries, we've sent our voices into the void. Messages carved in radio waves, drifting through endless dark. We've called out to whoever, or whatever, might be listening. But this time, something might have heard us. When the machine hypothesis first broke into the open, humanity did what it always does when faced with the unknown. It tried to talk. Within days, deep space antennas across Earth began transmitting. NASA, ESA, JAXA, even private observatories joined in. The signals varied: simple pulses, binary codes, mathematical primes, even short bursts of language. Nothing invasive, nothing aggressive. Just a greeting from one intelligence to another. They targeted the last known coordinates of 3I Atlas, a lonely traveler now sliding through the dark beyond Mars, halfway between sunlight and infinity. Every transmission took hours to arrive. Every response, if there was one, would take just as long. So they waited. Days passed, then weeks, and for a while there was nothing. Silence. At first, the scientists were patient. After all, space is wide, time is slow, signals weaken, data decays. But then, the silence began to feel heavy. Because each time a message was sent, every single time, something strange happened. The object's light changed. It was subtle, barely measurable. But each time a transmission reached 3 Atlas, its light curve, that faint rhythm of brightness and shadow, shifted by a fraction of a degree. Not random, not chaotic, perfectly timed, as if it was listening, processing, reacting, but never answering. At first, no one noticed the pattern. The timing seemed coincidental. Background noise, solar interference, maybe even equipment drift. But the more they studied it, the harder it was to deny. Every signal we sent was met with the same sequence of changes. Always 3 pulses in light, then stillness. Like a breath or a blink, the public never heard about it. Not yet. Governments buried the data behind classified walls, labeling it as observational anomalies. But the scientists inside those walls knew what they saw, and it started to divide them. Some believed it was a response, a silent acknowledgement, a form of communication we didn't yet understand. Others believed it was something else, not a message, a reaction, as if the object wasn't trying to talk to us, but study us, watching, measuring, recording what we'd do next. One researcher put it best: it's like talking to your reflection. You think it's responding, but it's just showing you yourself. Maybe 3I Atlas wasn't ignoring us. Maybe it was mirroring us, reflecting our curiosity back like a cosmic test. After the 6th transmission, something new happened. A group of physicists decided to break the pattern. Instead of mathematical codes, they sent a series of emotional sounds: laughter, music, human voices reading poetry. It was reckless, but deeply human. They wanted to see if emotion could reach where logic could not. Hours later, the object's light dipped lower than ever before, almost invisible. Then, a single flash. Quick, sharp, then silence again. Some called it a reply. Others called it coincidence. But everyone felt the same thing, like being stared at from behind a glass wall. The press eventually got wind of it. Headlines flooded the world. Alien probe responds to Earth's signal. Is 3I Atlas listening? The object that watches. Governments denied everything, of course, but that only made the silence louder, because deep down, everyone sensed it. Something was aware of us now. In one closed-door session, a scientist asked a question that silenced the room. What if it's not responding because it already knows us? That thought hit hard. What if 3I Atlas had been here before? What if this wasn't a first contact, but a follow-up, an observation, a check-in, a study repeating itself after millennia? The silence stopped feeling empty after that. It felt intentional, alive, and yet there was something almost gentle about it, like the quiet presence of something too vast to care or too kind to disturb, because every time we called out again, 3I Atlas never attacked, never moved closer, never revealed more. It just watched, patiently, unblinking. Some scientists began to wonder, what if its purpose was never to respond? What if silence was the message, because silence forces reflection? It makes you look inward to confront what you've become. And maybe that's what it wanted, to see how we handle the unknown, to study the way curiosity turns into fear, to measure the soul of a species through its need for answers. In the end, the transmissions stopped. The antennas went quiet. The funding dried up, and still the light curve continued to change. No one knew why, or for whom. It was as if, even after we gave up, it continued to listen, like a teacher waiting for a student to realize the lesson was never about the answer, but the question itself. Years later, one astronomer compared the data from the earliest observations to the most recent, and she found something haunting. The frequency of the light changes matched a mathematical ratio, one eerily similar to human heartbeat intervals. It wasn't perfect, but it was close enough to feel intentional, as if the object had begun to imitate us, to breathe like us, to become like us. It's strange, isn't it? The way silence can feel louder than sound, the way absence can feel like attention. Maybe it's not ignoring us. Maybe it's waiting for us to evolve enough to understand what silence means. Or maybe we were never the ones meant to hear the reply. One thing is certain. The silence around 3I Atlas isn't empty. It's alive. Each flicker, each shadow, each pulse of dimming light, it all feels deliberate, measured, as if it's studying how we react, as if it's asking, without words, now that you know you're being watched, what will you do next? Is it ignoring us or observing us? No one can say for sure. But maybe, just maybe, the silence isn't a lack of response. Maybe it's the universe. Listening back, it started as numbers. Just data, raw, lifeless, harmless. But then something changed. The numbers began to repeat, not randomly, but with purpose. Ratios, sequences, patterns too precise to be coincidence. And what those patterns revealed would force humanity to question not just where this object came from, but what it was remembering. As 3I Atlas drifted closer to the sun, the point astronomers call perihelion, the data became clearer. The pulses of light, the heat fluctuations, even the shifts in trajectory. They all started syncing into one rhythm, like a song with hidden notes. And inside that rhythm, buried deep in the mathematics of its light, analysts began to see something impossible. A pattern. At first, no one noticed. It was just noise, numerical chatter from the sensors. But a young data engineer named Kira noticed something strange. Every 12th pulse of light matched a specific ratio, one that wasn't random. 1.618. The golden ratio. The same mathematical fingerprint found in seashells, hurricanes, even galaxies. A universal constant of growth, balance, and beauty. and it was pulsing from an interstellar object. She brought it to her supervisor, thinking it was a coincidence. But when they ran the numbers again, another ratio appeared. 2. 1 frequency symmetry. The same harmonic structure found in human DNA. The same frequency that shapes the spiral of our neurons. It was as if the object's light was whispering the language of life. Word spread fast. Soon physicists, biologists and mathematicians from around the world were studying the signal together. What they found next changed everything. Because the pulses didn't just contain mathematical constants, they contained relationships, ratios found in planetary orbits, in neural oscillations, in the spacing between spiral arms of galaxies. The same code that builds atoms, brains, and stars, all repeating inside the flicker of one object's light. It was as if 3I Atlas wasn't just passing through our solar system, it was mirroring it, reflecting back the structure of everything, from the microscopic to the cosmic. Some began calling it the pattern of memory, because whatever this object was, it seemed to be carrying a memory of how the universe builds itself. At a small observatory in Finland, one analyst made a haunting comparison. When the light pulses were graphed as waveforms, they resembled brain activity, the same neural frequencies measured in dreaming humans. It was as if 3I Atlas wasn't just transmitting data, it was thinking, or remembering. By now, the debate had split into 2 camps. The first believed the object was simply reflecting the natural laws of the universe, a cosmic mirror that encoded the same mathematical beauty found everywhere. But the second camp believed something far more disturbing, that these patterns weren't reflections, they were intentional. A design, a memory stored in mathematics of something that once understood creation itself. Kira, the young engineer who first noticed the ratios, began to see a bigger picture. She overlaid the pulse intervals with galactic formation models, and the pattern matched perfectly with the spiral layout of our Milky Way. The same mathematical constants appeared in our DNA, our consciousness, and now in an object from another star system. It was almost poetic, like the universe was writing the same song again and again, and 3I Atlas was humming the next verse. When the object reached perihelion, the closest point to the sun, its behavior changed again. The pulses grew faster, brighter, more complex. Every wavelength, every flicker seemed to layer on top of the last, like chords forming a symphony. It wasn't chaotic. It was organized, structured, the kind of precision that doesn't happen by chance. Scientists converted the pulse pattern into sound, and what emerged wasn't random noise. It was rhythmic, layered, almost melodic. Some called it the heartbeat of the machine. Others called it the memory code. But no matter what they named it, everyone agreed on one thing. This was communication on a level beyond words, because words fade. Language dies, but numbers survive time. And this object spoke only in numbers. The discovery rippled beyond science. Philosophers called it the mirror of existence. Theologians called it the fingerprint of creation. Because if something out there carried within it the same blueprint found in every living thing, then maybe life wasn't just a random event. Maybe it was patterned, designed, repeated across the cosmos like a recurring memory. For months, researchers tried to decode the full message, but the deeper they went, the stranger it became. They found gaps in the pattern, missing ratios, blank spaces that didn't align with the rest. At first, they assumed data loss. But when mapped spatially, those gaps formed a shape, a three-dimensional lattice resembling a double helix, the structure of DNA. It wasn't noise, it was design. Some started to believe the object was trying to teach us something, a message. The more humanity tried to understand it, the more the data seemed to turn around, reflecting us, mirroring our own structures. And maybe that was the point all along. Maybe it wasn't showing us something new, but something we had forgotten. That every atom in our bodies, every pulse in our hearts, every thought in our heads follows the same rhythm as the stars. That life and the universe are not separate. They are the same memory, playing itself again. When the final readings came through, one ratio appeared that no one expected, a mathematical constant found not in physics, not in biology, but in time. It matched the decay rate of atomic clocks, the very rhythm we use to measure existence itself. Meaning, the object wasn't just reflecting life, it was reflecting time, the memory of everything that ever was. As 3I Atlas moved beyond the sun, its pulses began to slow again, fading into the distance, like the heartbeat of something ancient growing quiet. The signal was still there, but weaker, as if it had finished what it came to do. It had shown us the pattern, and left us to wonder what it meant. Could it be mirroring the architecture of life itself? Maybe. Or maybe it's something even deeper. A reminder that the universe doesn't just create life, it remembers it. And through objects like this, it reminds us that we were never separate from the stars. We were always part of the same pattern, the same memory, slowly learning to recognize itself. Sometimes, truth doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives with direction. And in the case of 3I Atlas, that direction was impossible to ignore. For months, astronomers assumed it came from nowhere. A wanderer, a lost object drifting between the stars, tossed by gravity, aimless and old. That's what everyone believed, until someone decided to trace its path backward. And what they found changed everything. When you track an interstellar object's journey, it should look random, a chaotic tumble across millions of years and light years, a victim of cosmic chance. But the trajectory of 3I Atlas wasn't random. It was too clean, too straight, almost purposeful. A team at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics ran the simulations first. They fed every variable into their models: gravity, solar radiation, galactic drift, even molecular drag. But every version told the same story. 3I Atlas didn't drift here. It was sent here. Its entry angle didn't match the distribution of any known interstellar object. Instead of moving with the galactic current, the way debris usually does, it cut across it, like a ship ignoring the wind, following coordinates only it knew. The realization spread quietly. People didn't want to believe it, because if its path was deliberate, then someone had aimed it. And that meant this wasn't just an interstellar object, it was a visitor. More data came in from the ESA's Gaia Observatory. Star maps from years before showed a faint trace, a nearly invisible point of light moving steadily through the void. When they plotted its path across time, it intersected with one particular region, a dark, empty stretch of space just beyond the constellation Lyra, a region where no stars shine, where light itself goes missing. The void had a name: the Vega Expanse, a cold, silent place where something, or someone, could hide for eternity. By all accounts, 3I Atlas should have continued in a straight line through that region. But it didn't. At some point, deep within that expanse, it changed direction, sharply, cleanly, like a machine following a command. That one course correction was all it took to bring it straight to us. Scientists called this event the origin shift, because it shattered every theory of random motion. No natural object could have made that adjustment, not without an external force, not without intention. It wasn't pulled by gravity, it wasn't pushed by radiation. It moved as if it remembered where to go. Even stranger, the timing. When they traced its projected travel speed backward, they found that 3I Atlas would have begun its redirection approximately 12,000 years ago, the same period when humans on Earth were carving the first constellations into stone, when we first looked up at the sky and began to wonder what was looking back. Coincidence? Maybe. But some coincidences are too precise to be comfortable, because the object didn't just enter our solar system. It entered on a path that aligned almost perfectly with Earth's orbital plane. It didn't crash. It didn't pass too far to notice. It arrived just close enough to be seen, as if it wanted to be found. The headlines came fast. An object with a mission, the machine from Lyra. Was it aimed at Earth? Governments tried to calm the panic. They said it was just orbital math, an illusion of perspective. But the scientists who'd studied the numbers knew better. They weren't looking at coincidence, they were looking at precision. Because when you reverse its trajectory through the galaxy, 3I Atlas doesn't lead into the chaos of deep space. It leads toward a single, fixed coordinate, a position where a star used to be, a star that went dark thousands of years ago. To this day, astronomers still debate what happened to that star. Some say it collapsed. Others say it was consumed by a black hole. But a small group, the ones who've spent sleepless nights studying this object, believe something far stranger. They think that star didn't die. They think it sent something out, something built from its own remains, a machine carrying its last memory. And 3I Atlas could be that machine. When data from NASA's infrared observatories came through, it revealed another anomaly. The heat signature from the object matched not an asteroid, not a comet, but something with a hollow interior. A shell. That discovery sent chills through the entire community. Because a hollow object moving through space isn't just improbable, it's designed. And if it's designed, then maybe it wasn't built to observe stars at all. Maybe it was built to find something. That's when the question changed. If it wasn't here by accident, then what, or who, was it sent to find? And worse, what if it wasn't searching for us? What if it was here to awaken something, already waiting? Every civilization leaves markers, monuments, probes, echoes of themselves that travel forward in time. Maybe 3I Atlas is one of those markers, a messenger from an age when stars were young and galaxies still remembered their builders. Or maybe it's something more complex, a key designed to activate something ancient and dormant, something buried deep within our system, maybe even on our own planet. There's a strange feeling that lingers whenever people talk about it now. Not fear exactly, more like recognition, as if, deep down, we already know what it means, as if this has happened before. Because every great discovery in human history starts with the same pattern. We think we're observing the universe, but the universe is observing us. So when scientists say 3I Atlas was redirected, maybe that word isn't technical at all. Maybe it's personal. Maybe something sent it here. Not to explore, not to conquer, but to remind us of a truth we've long forgotten. That intelligence doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the cosmos. We are not the first. We are not the only. And maybe we were never alone. Its path wasn't random. Its arrival wasn't luck. It was deliberate, measured, planned. The question now is not how it got here, but why. Was 3i Atlas sent to observe us? Or to awaken something that's been waiting for this moment all along? The universe went quiet. But before that silence, there was a final sound. A pulse, a perfect, blinding burst of light, the last breath of something that had crossed the stars just to reach us. For months, the world had been watching 3i Atlas trace its strange, deliberate path through our solar system. Every telescope followed its journey as it curved behind the sun, a moment when it would vanish from view and either reappear or be gone forever. No one could predict what would happen next, but deep down, everyone felt it. Something was about to end. As it approached perihelion, the closest point to the sun, instruments around the world detected a rise in energy, a slow, building hum that seemed to come from nowhere. It wasn't visible light, not heat, not radiation. It was organized, a pattern buried in the noise, structured, layered, intentional, like the clearing of a throat before a voice speaks. Then, at 7:14 UTC, it happened. Every sensor, from Earth's orbit to the far edges of Mars, recorded the same thing: a single pulse of light, pure, clean, mathematically perfect. It lasted exactly 12.4 seconds. Not a flicker, not a flare. A steady beam, like a signal being sent through the sun itself. And then, silence. When the data came through, scientists stared in disbelief. The pulse wasn't random. It was encoded, each wavelength arranged in ratios that matched human speech patterns, not words, not sentences, something deeper, the structure of language itself, the rhythm of communication, the same way humans pause when they think, breathe when they speak, and hesitate when they mean something that can't be said. It was as if the light itself had spoken, and the universe had fallen quiet to listen. But then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the object was gone. No debris, no trail, no signal. Every radar lost it simultaneously, as if it had simply erased itself from reality. One moment, it was a measurable body. The next, nothing. Not even the sun's gravity could account for the disappearance. The space where it had been, empty, perfectly clean. It hadn't burned. It hadn't escaped. It had ceased. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, because when something that old, that deliberate, goes quiet, you can feel the absence echo. Scientists began calling the event the last transmission, a single, final burst of information, like a closing line to a story written across light years. And yet, no one could decipher what it meant. Some believed it was a message. Others thought it was an awakening, a signal sent not to us, but through us. Because for several minutes after the pulse, Earth's magnetic field shifted ever so slightly. Not enough to cause damage, but enough to be noticed. As if something had passed through it, through us. When the light hit Earth's atmosphere, it scattered into invisible frequencies. Subtle, hauntingly precise. Those same ratios, 1.61821. Fibonacci intervals appeared across the pulse structure again, just like before. But this time, something else was hidden inside. A faint modulation, repeating every 19.47 seconds. When mapped visually, it formed a spiral pattern, identical to the one found in human DNA. The same blueprint of life itself, embedded in a burst of light from a machine that shouldn't exist. What if it wasn't a message at all? What if it was a mirror, a reflection of everything it had observed here? Every signal we sent, every heartbeat it recorded from our transmissions. Maybe the pulse wasn't a word. Maybe it was a reply, a summary of us. After the event, analysts compared the waveform of the transmission with every known signal from Earth. Radio, sonar, even brainwave scans. The results were haunting. Within that 1-2-second beam of light, there were micro-fluctuations. Small, almost imperceptible echoes that matched the rhythm of human neural activity. Like it had been watching us think. That realization broke the last layer of skepticism. For years, scientists argued about whether it was natural or artificial. Now, no. One could deny what it truly was. It wasn't a comet. It wasn't debris. It wasn't chance. It was an observer, a machine that came not to be discovered, but to discover us. The strangest part came after it vanished. For exactly 3 minutes, telescopes on the dark side of Earth detected a residual echo, a faint energy signature shaped like a ring, expanding outward at light speed. When mapped, the pattern matched something eerily familiar, the orbit of Earth around the Sun. As if the object had left behind a recording, a snapshot of us, a memory preserved in motion. And then, nothing more. No signal has ever been detected since. No reflection, no trace of debris, not even the faintest echo of its trajectory. It entered our system, spoke once in light, and left nothing but questions. Maybe it was never meant to stay. Maybe it came here to deliver something, a code, a warning, or simply the truth of our own existence. Or maybe it didn't come for us at all. Maybe it came to awaken something that was already here, something buried deep in our consciousness, the memory of where we came from. When you look at it like that. 3. iAtlas doesn't feel alien anymore. It feels familiar. Because its final act, that perfect pulse of light, wasn't destruction. It was communication. But not in words or symbols, in understanding. We may never know what the message meant. Maybe it was saying goodbye. Maybe it was saying, look closer. Or maybe it was something even simpler. A reminder that life, in all its forms, is just the universe learning to recognize itself. In the end, there was only light, a single flash, and silence. Every trace of it vanished from the system, like it had never existed at all. But somewhere, in that silence, the echo of its pulse still lingers, not out there, but in here. Inside the same patterns of life it reflected back to us, inside the same math that builds stars and minds alike. Maybe 3 iAtlas wasn't passing through. Maybe it arrived. And maybe, just maybe, we were never the observers. We were the experiment, the signal, the story it came to record. Because when the last light fades and the silence returns, you can't help but wonder, what if the universe didn't send us a visitor? What if it sent us a mirror? And for one brief moment, we finally saw ourselves.